Hello and welcome. I am so delighted to be here today answering a question from one of you lovely lot who are subscribed to this channel, watching these videos. Thank you so much for investing your time and energy in that. And thank you to our person here who sent this question through, because it's such an important part of us understanding ourselves, our experience. We make sense of ourselves in the world by being in conversation, by asking questions, by getting a response and then asking another question and refining and clarifying. That is just life all over. We're here to be in relationship with things and with people like that. So I am so delighted. Thank you to this wonderful viewer who's sent this question in. And it felt like such an important one to create a video about because, I mean, it's a classic example of a misunderstanding over a word, which makes the world of difference when you actually clarify what you mean by that word. It's why when Sarah Priestley and I wrote The Complete Book of Awakening, we were so particular about the words we used and we had a definition for those words and we were consistent with using the same word consistently for that same reason. And so I love the fact that this wonderful viewer, has watched my videos and has sent this question in because it allows us to then have this conversation to clarify what do we actually mean by this word. And as you already know from the title of this video, the word is the trigger. So it was such a great insight for me to remember on the back of this question what most people think a trigger is and how different that is from my understanding as a Mace Energy Method practitioner. So, and all of us as practitioners, in fact. So the question was, when we talk about trigger, we generally mean a sight, sound, smell, taste, or combination of the above from our environment, which activates a replaying or reliving of aspects of a past traumatic or upsetting experience. Totally get that. And so this person said, I'm trying to understand how removing the specific trigger actually deletes the trauma itself. And what does this mean for other aspects of how a trauma can affect us, the more subtle and not just that acute high energy trigger situation? So, the really important part of this question is to be clear on what we mean by trigger. And I'm like, yeah, I should totally have clarified that long before this point in my journey. Now, 18 months into the Mace Energy Method, 12 months into being qualified, I really should have done a video on what a trigger is before now. Anyway, here we are. We are now clarifying what we mean by trigger. So, as I said before, this viewer has said about trigger being the thing in the world. That's what we're brought up to believe. That's what we're trained to believe. That's what most people understand. That the trigger is the person. The trigger is the situation. The trigger is that TV show. The trigger is, I don't know, going for a walk down the street and having to go past that dog, or flying a plane, going on a plane, flying a plane. That would be quite an exciting one to do. But yeah, going on a plane flight, or having to do that presentation with that particular boss, investor, stakeholder, or having a certain volume of work on your plate which triggers you into overwhelm and too much. All sorts of things are labeled as triggers, all these things in the world. Money, even, is a great one as to be a trigger. Um, and so there's this big misunderstanding that the problem is the thing, that the thing out there, that's what gets called the trigger. And so it's really easy to say, well, that therefore is the problem. If I could just change that thing out there, then I'd be okay. Which is why people can then either get resistant to these things and reject them and push them away and sometimes get quite angry about them or quite like, oh, no, don't like it, stop it, go away. But equally, why we can retreat and retract into ourselves and go, oh, let me just hide from this thing. Let me just cut myself off from that thing. And then it becomes, oh, but let me cut myself off from that thing and that thing and that thing. And we end up having a shrunken world in both directions because we've either said no to so much stuff that we've cut off half of our world, or we've, in that reactive way, or we've shrunk away from so many things that we've created a small world in that way. So that's the common understanding of trigger, that the trigger is the thing in the world, and that Therefore, in my videos, when I've been saying we delete the trigger, understandable that that would be confusing. As this person saying in their question, like, how does dealing with something in the world, how does deleting that solve anything for me with my inner experience of reaction, resistance, defensiveness, protection, uh, overdoing it, underdoing it? Like, how does deleting that thing in the world change this inner experience? And it was such a brilliant question because it really had me go, oh my God, yes, of course. Most people would say trigger is the thing in the world. Whereas when I say trigger, the trigger is in you. That's what we're deleting in the Mace Energy method. That's what we're dealing with. That's what we're handling. That's what we're cleaning up. The trigger that is in you. Because actually, that's the only thing that's ever been the problem. It's never actually been the thing in the world or the person or the activity. It's always been the reaction or the resistance in you. That's always been the source of the problem. That is what I mean when I say trigger. Because when you are triggered, it's in you. The trigger is in you. The world is the external stimulus, absolutely. But it has to be pressing on something in you. There has to be a button it's pushing in you. So when my kids were little and triggered, I was getting triggered by them, it was because they were pushing my buttons. We say that about kids a lot. They're pushing my buttons because the trigger is actually in you. Like, what's his name? Michael. I've forgotten his name now. Untethered Soul. Somebody no doubt will remind me in the comments. He talks about the thorn. I was actually recording a podcast interview on Friday with Juliet O'Rourke for her ADHD, Gifted with ADHD podcast. And he used that same metaphor of the thorn. And he talks about how people have had we've got these thorns in our system. And rather than dealing with the thorn, the world has kept looking at the outside saying, like I said before, we either push things away or we retreat back from things, which essentially means we put layers and layers and layers and layers of protection over the thorn to try and avoid being triggered by the outside world, only to discover the trigger still happens. It doesn't go away. You just covered it over with a layer of blankets. Or like I said to somebody the other day, it's like the princess and the pea. The pea's still there. Doesn't matter how many mattresses you put over the top of it, you can still feel the pea. So this trigger, this thorn, this button, this pea, whichever metaphor you want to use, it is in you. That is the only problem that exists. Which can sound like kind of terrible news because, oh my God, I'm the problem. But it really is great news because it puts the power back in your hands, which is rightfully where it belongs. And it opens the doorway for you then to go, okay, well, now I know it's in me. What do I want to do about it? Which puts you in a million time better position to deal with it and handle it. Because all the time when you're projecting into the world and saying, oh, it's them that's the problem, it's that that's the problem, it's that job that's the problem, it's that amount of money that's the problem. When you're doing that, you're completely giving your power away to that thing out there saying that's the problem. That's an endless chase, trying to solve that thing as the problem, trying to solve that trigger, because then you solve that one, another trigger will pop up somewhere else. I've seen that so many times. Move away from one relationship that isn't working, and then a few years later find myself in another one that's like a carbon copy, pushing on the same button in me because I hadn't actually dealt with the trigger in me. I hadn't actually dealt with that thorn in me. So the same kind of relationship popped up again to go, yeah, Helen, you didn't actually deal with it. You just moved away from that relationship. So it's back again. It's here again to get you to look at that and see that the trigger is in you. The thorn is in you. That is the only point of power. That is the only place where you're going to deal with it properly, thoroughly, completely. And when you do deal with it, and in my experience, as you may well know from listening to other videos of mine, I have not found anything as precise, as effective, as fast as the Mace Energy method in dealing with these thorns, in actually getting them out of your system. so that they don't, there's nothing there anymore to be triggered. They don't, there's no trigger. There is nothing there for anything or anybody to push. Therefore, there is no reaction. Therefore, to the question again, all the associated smaller elements of any kind of reactive trauma response are also dealt with. Because you remove the source, you remove that thorn, all the traits, all the strategies, all the thoughts and feelings that were related to it are all dealt with in one go. So that that person no longer triggers you because there is no thorn. Then you get to see more clearly. Then you're back in your own power, in charge of your own life. John Mace's dream, his mission, his purpose, the whole purpose of this work, to have you in charge of your own life, living your own life and dreams. And so from that place, then you are free to choose for you, not from a reaction, not in avoidance of being triggered, from you, as you. And what that response is, we can never know prior to deleting the trigger, the thorn, remembering that trigger is in you. Prior to deleting it, and I said this in, I think in the last video or the one before last, when the trigger is there, you're always seeing, oh yes, the one about raising levels of consciousness. It was the last video. So sorry, distracting myself. When the thorn is there, you can only see from that level of consciousness. You can only experience that person or that situation or the money from that same level of consciousness. You literally cannot do anything else. Once you've deleted the trigger, instantly you are in a higher level of consciousness with that person, situation, and many more besides. Because the instant the trigger is gone, what's left is more you, and more you is a higher level of consciousness. As that, now you see the person, you see the situation, you've got the clearest view on that, on them. And now you get to see, well, what is this like for me? The real me, the true, clean, clear, grounded, peaceful, present me. And then you get to see what's my true response, not reaction, my true response to this person or this situation or this money or this time or this energy, whatever it is. And you can see that people who went from being awful, can't stand that person, can then actually shift into being a person that you have huge compassion for, even that you might love as a friend or a family member. You equally might clear the trigger and go, yeah, no, I do not match with you. We are not a match. There's nothing personal in it. We're just not a match together. We just don't click. That's all, that's all, that's it. No offense, nothing personal, no judgment. Like, I see you. I see that you're a valid person. I see that you are living a valid life. But you and I we're just not a match. That's it. And so you then choose to move away from that person. Sometimes that will happen quite proactively. You might see that not matching and quite purposefully, proactively take a different decision, make a different choice. Sometimes these things just quietly fade away, and the people who you used to be really connected to just quietly disappear out of your world. No big fanfare, no big drama, just things gradually change and shift and morph into something else. And so, same with anything, be it be money, whether it be work, whether it be a particular activity, you get to see so much more clearly when you're free from those triggers. You get to see and feel so much more clearly and cleanly what is for you and what is not. And you get to make that choice for you from that grounded clarity, from the real you, instead of from a reaction, instead of from that lower level of consciousness that's just infiltrated by that trigger feeling and by that fundamentally that negative identity, which will just taint it will taint the whole view. It will put a confusing layer over the whole thing. Once that's dealt with, thorn gone, trigger gone, negative identity gone, same language, all pointing to the same thing. When that's all gone, and it doesn't take long, then you get to see the person, you get to see the experience, you get to see the money, you get to see the time, you get to see the energy, and you get to feel good in yourself with whatever that is. And then you're back in charge of choosing. And as I've said many times before, everybody begins their Mace Energy Method journey with the foundations. That's where we promise to solve the biggest one or two problems that you're experiencing in your life right now. Then that might be enough. You might be complete, you might be delighted with your results and just go skipping off into the distance. You might just get to a place where you're like, ah, yeah, this is okay. I can manage this now. I can navigate from this now. And you might feel good from it and want more. You might want to go further with your Mace Energy Method journey and get into some of the further programs around getting better at getting stuff done, being more in love with having and receiving and abundance and wealth. And for those who get further and further on, the program about staying in the now. Plus, there is always the option to have an ad hoc session, 30 minutes or half an hour as I do it. I think most practitioners do that too. You just bring your agenda. Here's the stuff I've been noticing that's been bugging me. Here's the stuff that I don't want to keep living with. Great. Let's get that dealt with the process. So, thank you again for having asked this question. I'm purposefully not saying your name, partly because it's a handle on YouTube. It's not going to mean very much, but thank you for asking the question. Um, so useful to be asked the question. I really hope this video has been so helpful to you in clarifying what I have been meaning when I've been saying trigger. I have been meaning the thing in you because that really is the only place it's ever existed. The external is the stimulus, but the trigger has always been in you. But if you want to call trigger the outside thing, no problem. You can give whatever that you can call whatever a trigger that you want to. Feel free. The important thing is to know that the source of the problem is in you. The reaction is in you. The trauma response is in you. The negative identity is in you. And it's only when that external stimulus presses that button that it's going to get activated. That's when you're in that trigger response. That's when you're in that fight, flight, freeze. That's when, for those who've gone into any kind of personal development, emotional intelligence or spiritual development, that reaction can be there and you kind of quickly cover it over with lots of very much more capable and much more acceptable and much more socially acceptable thoughts, feelings, behaviors. But when the reaction's there, the reaction's there. And it's going to stay there like that pee under the mattresses until you deal with it. And if you don't deal with it, it's only going to get worse and it's only going to come splurging out through mental unhealth, emotional unhealth, or physical unhealth, relational unhealth. It will show up somewhere in your life until you deal with it. So my highest recommendation is get this work done sooner rather than later. Get yourself back into feeling clean and clear, free from these triggers. The more you clean up, the better you feel, the more you're in an upwards trajectory of forward momentum and progress. And so if that's for you, I really, really look forward to working with you. Take care.